Thank you for listening to the Court of Public Opinion. We're going to go right into the topic regarding emotional abuse and how to identify it and start that journey of recovery. Like many people who have endured narcissistic emotional abuse, you probably don't realize what was happening until you reached that point near insanity, according to Susan Anderson, author of The Journey from Abandonment to Healing. While these shady behaviors on your partner's part are indicators of having a destructive personality disorder, they are very strong signs that your partner and an abandonment of its own kind of grief, a powerful universal to human beings. The grief can be acute, as when we go through the ending of a relationship, or chronic, as when we feel the impact of earlier losses and disconnection. So I wanted you could read the rest of this because I'm going to touch on a few things here in a moment. Let's go to 1, 2, and 3, how you can identify some of the problems. Unresolved abandonment is a primary source of self-sabotage. If you feel your partner simply puts up with you only coming around to keep things strung along, it's because you serve a purpose. Some of us have felt like that. So if communicating your partner leaves you feeling unheard, unstable, frustrated, it's because they don't care about you, much less what you have to say. A person who loves you, wants to spend time with you, know all about you, ensure that you feel safe and cared for. 2, you don't feel good enough. Some people might look that, but although you've proven success to your career, have built a solid foundation for yourself, received compliments regarding your accomplishments and even your looks, you've begun to doubt those things, and no matter the kudos you receive from the outside world, your partner does not seem to realize, or and worse, mocks you. Narcissistic mock and ridicule for many reasons, including making themselves appear superior. What better way to keep you under their rule than to make you feel like what you matter, what you accomplish, you still feel like a loser underneath it all. Sadly, this works quite effectively in many cases, resulting in victims of that type of abuse becoming so broken, dysfunctional, that they lose everything: career, children, homes, licenses, such as, and then if you've noticed, you're feeling overwhelming, insignificant inside your relationship, a failure at life in general, which concedes that the time you spent, okay, I'm sorry, I just missed that. Number 3, you feel engulfed by the relationship. One of the trademarks of narcissistic individuals is the way they hijack the victim's world, effectively consuming every moment of the day. This engulfment can be observed in the way they call, text, email numerous times, often hundreds, encourage you to detach from friends and family. This engulfment also consists of walking on eggshells, feeling a persistent anxiety that you experience. I know a lot of people that have anxiety, and you may have been around it, and once you identify, suddenly like the shift in your life changes. It's dramatic. So I learned some techniques, and we've talked about this earlier about recovery techniques, and it's really just that simple. There are a few techniques, actually. One, I know it's a therapeutic technique about getting a notebook and writing down some of the people in your life that you have had this kind of relationship with, which actually, it could be more than one person, and it doesn't have to be necessarily a partner. It could be an employee or a co-worker at work. It could be a neighbor. It could be somebody you see on a regular basis. There could be a number of people in your life that you can always sense there's some level of narcissistic abuse there, okay? But the real core issues is that it lays the groundwork what was going on in your family, which they say it plays out in other areas, meaning once you've reached that point, you can't handle the overwhelming anxiety and abandonment, which I've reached that point, and a lot of you might have, okay? You can't live with yourself. It's affecting the way you live your life. It's come to the point that you can't continue to live this way, okay? Meaning you have to identify what's going on, okay? And another problem is you cannot justify their behaviors. No matter how much you want better for them, this is not about them. It's about identifying who you are and what happened to you. So you got to stay focused. Every time you start to focus on them, it's time to shift the focus back on what happened to you in this, okay? I mean, a lot of people, what ends up happening is they apologize for those people's behavior, and that's not the point. Okay, you have to identify, the whole thing about identifying this is that this is about you. It's about your recovery. It's about you processing what happened to you. Okay, I found myself doing this a lot. Like, I immediately want to think about, well, they didn't really mean that. I was actually thinking this even while I'm in silence, and I didn't have the verbal skills, I didn't have the communication skills I have now. But if you're in a relationship where I'm not talking about 3 or 4 different texting messages. We're talking about 30, 40, 50, sometimes 80 text messages a day. Okay, some people get bothered by a couple text messages. Life is pretty busy, so I realize texting can slow people down. And I would recommend, if you have other methods of communicating, especially if you're in a relationship where you don't see each other a lot, try to make an agreement where, okay, we don't need to text each other 80 times a day, but just let me know what you're doing. Or maybe go a little step further, because realistically, you're going to want to talk to each other. If you love each other and you want to be together, you're going to want to talk to each other. Now, in some cases, you can delegate how you do that depending on what's going on. But you want to be flexible, and you want to be able to have a relationship. It's going somewhere, okay? If you don't, you're going to feel lost and abandonment, okay? And usually that's the markers of a relationship. That it's going to take time to build that relationship. But in a relationship with a narcissistic person, you never know where you're at. You never get a phone call. You never have anything. You're just kind of stringing along, wondering what's going to happen next. This way, by taking back control and focusing on you, you may eventually just walk away from these people altogether. Unfortunately, we live in a world where there's so much of it that you'll be like by yourself anyway, okay? And that's where that abandonment and all that painful stuff comes from, because it goes back to the core issues. What were your relationships with the parent or guardians in your life? What was that like? I have to tell you, if you can look back in your life and you say, I didn't see my parents here, they didn't give me that lesson in life here. I don't want to throw all these people under the bus, because not everybody's perfect, okay? But you know what you needed at the time, and that need was not met. Like, it's really important to be supportive of one another, especially if there's like a sporting event or there's a project you want them to participate in. And I would say the same goes for your friends, okay? If they don't support what you're doing, and you just sense that like all your good deeds and all your projects go on deaf ears, it's time to change your friends, okay? So that's how it really is, okay? Or change some things in your life. And I don't think, for anyone that wants to try to change other people, good luck there. It takes the power away from you. That's why I say, don't blame other people. You're giving your power away. You can own your behavior, and you don't have to be afraid of it. This is not about like punishing yourself. Owning your behavior, saying, okay, I own this. Now what do I do with it? Okay, it's like, you do got to think these things through. And anyone that doesn't think their decisions through, they're in a colossal mess, okay? It's like, okay, every once in a while throughout the day, you got to check yourself. Like, okay, I could have done that different. I could have approached this handle. Why am I getting upset about this when I know that realistically would not work out normally? These are the things that you want to be sending. You remind yourself to think it through. Okay, I don't see anything wrong with checking yourself, okay? Anyone that thinks that they can't check themselves or not evaluate themselves throughout the day, how are you going to change or grow and get healthy? This is it for me, because where I was a couple weeks ago and a couple months ago after coming out of surgery, I had to do some serious checking myself. I came out of a relationship where that was all you had was isolation and abandonment, and it was starting to, and not having dealt with it was coming out in other ways. So once I got to the realization, I'm like, okay, I can identify where this happened and what happened. And it's amazing, because once you've distanced yourself away from the problems long enough, you can start to figure out what went wrong there. But if you're just hurting all the time 24/7, and you're not sleeping right and you're not eating right, you have to identify what that is. A lot of people talk about drugs and alcohol. I believe drugs and alcohol are just a symptom of a deeper problem. And the deeper problem could be Maybe there was a broken relationship with a sibling. Maybe there was a broken relationship with relatives. Maybe you are justified for that relationship breaking. Listen, no one should have to give anyone permission to mistreat you or hurt you. And you, as that adult, and not often with children because they don't identify, they're always wondering what we're always walking on eggshells around this person. Usually, kids know what's going on. That with a level of experience and insight, they will appreciate this. If you don't feel like you're getting the constant cold shoulder and that parent is always focused on the other kids and not you, that to me is a sign that your relationship with that person is not good, okay? And you need to cut them out, okay? It's not that you can't care about them, but if you really want to keep hurting, the big step for me was just I had to walk away from some people. We weren't good for each other. They weren't good for me, and I wasn't good for them. And, and if you don't, what do you do with that anger? Do you sit there and stew about it? It's time to just cut each other loose for a while. You could write a nice letter without being nasty. And I would recommend that. I would recommend writing a letter or using other techniques, journaling. I really recommend journaling. When you write this stuff down and you keep doing it and you go back to it, and you can go back and look back, wow, my life was like crazy. There's so many things going on in relationships. There's so many different dynamics playing out. And I look at some of the tools that some people gave me that really helped me. Some of the tools I actually apply all the time, like the birth order book, the personality traits in the birth order, to how it plays out in work. Like a lot of times what you'll find out is maybe your boss was the only child in a relationship, meaning it's a different dynamic. They didn't grow up with the same structure. So a lot of times what ends up happening is that's how they live their life. It's not like they did it on purpose. It's just the dynamic they grew up in. So you can find out a lot about a person by the way they grew up, okay? So when we say get to know somebody, we say find out about their family, find out about the rules that were played out in their life. And you'd be so surprised how many people I've met that you can really get to know them just by the way they grew up, the things that they value, culture. And by today's standard, people think being diverse means that you're from another country. Not necessarily. There's so many diverse people in America that have grown up in America in different states, like different accents, different standards, values, like their grandmothers. You often hear so many people talk about their relatives and family and the values and how mom and dad would talk to them, where they were in that kitchen table when they had that talk about sex, which is a perfect opportunity to talk about that. But you need to know that if you're coming through this situation where you just always feel grieved, you're always hurting, you're always upset, you haven't really talked to anybody about it, you didn't really know where to start, but all of a sudden the light bulb goes off. I'm going to put some links below. To me, a lot of people look at physical abuse and they look at sexual abuse, but they don't often identify emotional abuse, which I think is one of the harder ones to identify. Social media is the hardest place to get to know somebody. You have to really physically, outside of talking to somebody on a social media page, is get to know them. And that's a risk a lot of people take. Relationships are risky anyway. You take a bigger risk because you don't really know somebody till you really meet them. And if you have this perfect ideal picture of somebody and you're romancing this fantasy, it's nice. As long as you are aware that it's just a fantasy, in reality, that person's a human being, and you'll end up loving them for who they are and not for the fantasy. And you can check yourself. I always think of that along the lines of that, like, can I like this person at the worst moment? Can I love this person when things are really crappy? And then you can check yourself. You'll know you have the right person in your life if you're at your worst and you're still there for each other. And I have to tell you, if you're that fortunate to find somebody who's helped you through the worst, then they're a keeper, okay? There's a lot of sweet people that just get overlooked so much. Like, how do you miss that one? Like that one's the gem. He's the one, or she's so sweet that even when I was at my worst, she was there for me. So appreciating the people in your life, like, wow, you know what you've invested in yourself when you invest in others? Appreciation. Have you not been in a bad relationship where you met somebody and you just appreciate them that much more? Or have you had a hard day? I've had a few of mine, very, very hard days where I'm sweating and working really hard, and I would do anything to escape to the bed and just talk to my honey. Like, why not have those moments where you have somebody to look forward to? And it doesn't necessarily mean it has to be a romantic relationship. Just girls and guys that can have that kind of friendship. If you don't have a boyfriend or girlfriend, you better either have a nice puppy, a fish, and a cat, or a good friend that you can turn to and just talk to each other and hug each other and carry each other through that. That's what friendship is about. It's not a substitute for a romantic relationship. It has all the benefits that you can walk away feeling like you have a wholesome relationship with somebody. Why not have that feeling that you're growing and you're changing in who you are, and you are starting to like what you have? And why not like that? Because you worked for it, and it's nice to appreciate good things, and it's too easy to let all the bad things get in your way. You have to have constant reminders. Listen, I'm probably not the person to be putting up post-it notes, but if it takes that, I have to put 20 of them right in front of the coffee pot when I go in the morning, because I know what kind of person I am in the morning. And you don't want to. I wasn't always like that. I'm not a morning person as I used to, and that's because my schedule's so jacked up. But here's the thing: if I have to put like 30 post-it notes right around the coffee pot, so be it. And if Mr. Honey Bunny looks at me and he asks me, why is there 30 post-it notes? I was like, well, because I'm miserable in the morning and I remind myself to snap out of it. I mean, there are ways to get around things, Listen, I know guys don't always do the post-it notes. I'm kind of happy that, he doesn't, okay? I'm kind of happy some of my girlfriends don't do that, but if that's what it takes, I was like, why can't you do it if you're in a bad mood? And they'll look at you like, I'm going to go to the store. You're okay. You know what I mean? It's learning to laugh at yourself, because there's so many people who are broken and hurting, and they need like, it's like kind of like cracking the case. They need somebody to crack it open for them, or they need that big light bulb to go off. It's like, okay, finally the light bulb is going off. Finally they're getting it. The breakthrough is happening, and my goodness, wow! Suddenly, the water is parted. It's not necessarily Moses, but like, wow, we had a breakthrough. When they talk about those breakthroughs, I think then you get grounded. You have to stay grounded. You're excited about the journey you're on, so immediately it's time to get grounded. And when I talk about getting to the grounding effect and Gershall therapy, about the patterns that are playing out, you'll start to understand how it all fits together. The whole point to this is there have been different dynamics playing out in your life. So that's why Gershall therapy is a study of how patterns are played out. And if you spend as much time as I have researching and trying to unlock some of the things that are going on in our lives, and you know how significant that breakthrough is, then you know exactly why you ended up here to begin with. The first step and the second step and the third step, the recovery begins now and today. Because if you're waiting to do this tomorrow, it probably might not even happen. While you have it fresh in your mind, write some things down, some small goals you would like to work towards, whether it be journaling or walking, just taking care of yourself. But once you have had this breakthrough, now the journey begins. The Court of Public Opinion is a part of the Amateur Radio Network.